Ladies and gentlemen, the first thing you have to do when evaluating the Recount report tomorrow from Arizona, the first thing that Democrats have to do, the first thing media has to do, and hit subscribe to this channel because I'm going to tell you the most important thing that all of media, Republicans and Democrats, have to do before reading the Recount report to give context, to understand the bird's eye view, the macro perspective of what's going on in politics. Arizona, this is Fox 10 Phoenix. Arizona State House member selected to replace Tony Navarrete in State Senate. The Arizona Republic, House member and chair of Arizona Democratic Party to replace Tony Navarrete in Senate. Why is this man being replaced? Does anyone know? Do you think that MSNBC and CNN are focusing on this? You think the Democrats, that Hollywood Twitter, you think Max Boot at the Washington Post or others throughout the country are focusing on this? No. They're focusing on the outrage. The fact that Republicans would dare question the validity of results. Tony Navarrete, the Democrat, the state senator in Arizona, Democrat, was arrested and charged with, I think, seven or so felony counts pertaining to the most despicable behavior that I can't even talk about on YouTube. Okay? You can look it up. Far more, infinitely more terrible and outrageous and horrifying and disgusting and nefarious and egregious than the Arizona recount. Okay? So just remember that. That's the backdrop here. That's what you have to actually remember. Focus on the overall picture, not just one little piece of the pie in terms of politics. Focus on going ahead and looking at everything in its entirety. Look at the corruption that goes on within the Democratic Party. You can look at Tony Navarrete as an example. And look at the outrage over cyber ninjas. Where do you think the emotion is placed? You think Democrats, you think AOC or Bernie Sanders or Nancy Pelosi or the DNC or CNN or MSNBC want to focus on the alleged crimes, the felony counts that we can't even talk about because they're absolutely so despicable and nefarious? No. He was forced to step down for a reason. Now you have the Arizona recount coming up. James Scully! World is going... I want to throw up. Yes, James, thank you to my super chat. I can't do this without you. Thank you so very much, James. World is going to... I know the first part. I can't read the second one. James, thank you to my UK viewers. Thank you. Thank you, James, as always. To my super chat. I can't thank you enough. I can't do this without you. If you want to talk about the recount or the economy or the fact that the stock market is going to simply just pop, this is a terrible analogy, but the Hindenburg comes to mind when you think of today's stock market. Subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel, my other channel. But ladies and gentlemen, before you get to the recount, understand what's going on in Arizona. Understand what they're trying to not talk about, suppress, sweep aside, sweep under the rug. Okay? Pretty despicable potential crimes. So when they're outraged over the recount, ask if there's anybody close to the Arizona state senator who was forced to resign because of the felony counts. By tomorrow morning, ladies and gentlemen, we will have the Arizona Recount report. There will likely be surprises. You have to take them with, okay, the impact of the report will depend upon how Arizona Republicans communicate any disparities, discrepancies. They have to be able to communicate effectively. So, and they also have to understand that immediately when the report comes out, when the Arizona State Senate reads the report or gives it to media, immediately the number one goal of Democrats and media, which are basically the same thing, and hit subscribe to this channel right now. The number one goal of Democrats and media will be to mitigate and to disparage and to undermine any information that is stated within the report. Any information is going to be quickly refuted, debunked, and it's going to be debunked based on, oftentimes, the viewpoint, just merely the viewpoint of officials who disagree. That's it. Just simply the viewpoint of people who disagree. That's it. That will be the only way to refute bizarre anomalies, discrepancies, numbers that don't make sense, numbers that don't add up. And all they had to do was say in the very beginning, we needed to find out if the addresses match the votes. That's all they had to do. That's all they had to do. In Arizona or around the country, that's all they had to do. And for the life of me, I don't understand why it's so difficult to communicate that. Ian! The amount of hypocrisy and double standards are insane criminality. Insane. Exactly. That's why, Ian, I think we should all remember, when looking at the Arizona recount, just think of the Arizona state senator who is facing, 6 or 7 or 8 felony counts. I mean, they're more upset. I have yet to hear a national condemnation of the Arizona state senator in Arizona. We've heard of a condemnation of the recount. Where's a condemnation of the Arizona state senator accused of the most despicable activity? B, thank you. I've yet to hear that. Ian, thank you as always. I can't thank you enough as always, Ian. And I agree with you. B, thank you so very, very much. Greatly appreciate it. That is an awesome profile. Yes. B, thank you so very, very much. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you for the kind words. Ian, thank you as always. You gotta look at, very likely they're going to say what they've said just the past couple of weeks. Well, we have to verify that the protocols related to the public health crisis, that those protocols, the results derived from changes in normal policy still correlated to addresses that were the correct addresses of people who decided to vote early via mail. Okay. If that's not if that's not the most long-winded, I could have just explained that in half a sentence, but I'm trying to be algorithmically friendly as always. So that's all they need to focus on. It's not that difficult, okay? We know without a shadow of a doubt that Mashed Potato Brains is the most popular candidate of all time. He's eloquent, charming. He definitely does not slur his speech, and he definitely does not go into this frightening, demonic, hushed whisper when he speaks to try to make a point. And then, of course, it's like, experts say that when Biden whispers, his silence is deafening. His silence speaks volumes. Like, everything you look at is, like, fabricated nowadays. It's unbelievable. Nobody even believes the nonsense. Nobody even believes. Nobody even believes the nonsense. Yes, B, thank you. Go Raiders. B, thank you so very much. Ian, thank you. Emily, hello. He definitely doesn't whisper in a frightening voice or slur his speech or go on bizarre rants and tangents, or definitely they don't mute his microphone because they're embarrassed of him. I'm surprised they didn't mute his microphone at the UN. That would have been fantastic. He's like, people of the world. That would have been amazing if they had muted his microphone. I mean, they do it with us. Why not with the UN? So then you have this like U.S. News, buckle up. Arizona Republicans to show 2020 recount results. Buckle up. Brace for impact. Buckle up. Everything. It's like when they investigate Trump and they accuse Trump of everything under the book, everything under the sun, everything in the book, and all they do is just make things up. They're now, if you watch Lawrence O'Donnell tonight, on MSNBC or like on YouTube, they are literally now reporting that their stories are based on Bob Woodward's book. That's all they're doing now. Their stories now are based on a book. Mark, hello. Their stories now, Ian and B and everybody here, are based on a book. That's it. James, thank you. A book is now the basis for actual debate, discussion, dialogue about whether Trump has committed crimes. A book. There's also Clinton Cash by what's his name? By Peter Schweitzer. Okay? There's Clinton Cash. But could you imagine if CNN and MSNBC did segments on Clinton Cash by Peter Schweitzer? Could you imagine that? They would never do that. They would never in a million years do that. They would say, oh, well, they would say, it's a book, there's no evidence, it's someone's opinion, it's unsourced, it's unverified, it's baseless, it's simply an anonymous source saying something bad about Madam Secretary and Bubba Bill, and there's no basis in reality. Well, they utilized the Steele dossier for 4 years. They had very biased, and not just biased, you had intelligence operatives who had the utmost contempt for Trump. Peter Strzok literally texted, "We will stop Trump." And it still wasn't enough for them. And then with William Barr, they're like, "Oh, he's Trump's henchman." It's like, well, where's his text saying he'll stop Biden? What if he texted that? Would that be okay? A little bit different from an agent actually working to investigate Trump. So it's like the double standard, Ian, you're 100% right, is unbelievable. And what is this nonsense? U.S. News has a segment on the racial divide. What does that even mean? The ongoing series from U.S. Deep Unfiltered Look a deep, unfiltered look, the greatest inequality, the greatest levels of poverty, the greatest increase in crime are in Democratic-run cities or Democratic-run states. Either the governor or the mayor of the city is a Democrat. With the most divide. Just look at, they should say, the divide caused by Democrats. But it's like everything is sensationalized. Bacon, I am not. No, I am not. Everything is sensationalized. Every single thing is sensationalized. And I think that's one of the pitfalls or one of the negatives. The inability of Republicans in Arizona to understand what they were up against. If you are going to engage in a recount, you have to understand that media is pulling for one side. Media does not like Trump. They despise him. They hold him the utmost contempt and disdain, and they don't want him around. They are going to, if they have nothing on Trump, they're going to accuse him before they find any evidence. With Hunter Biden, it's taken 7 months now. 10, 12 months now. About 10 months since the Hunter Biden email story came out. Politico just the other day said, oh yeah, it might be accurate. The New York Post already knew it was accurate. We already had people willing to testify under oath. We already had documentation from the owner of the computer repair shop in Delaware. We already had emails that could easily be verified and that were verified by people who sent them. Tony Bubala. That's one person who was basically interviewed and, said, yeah, those emails are legitimate, and, he was basically working on behalf of his father, and, he was using the allure of access or giving access to the United States government for business deals. And then there's the issue of 10% to the big man. 10%. You think that Biden got $9 or $10 million from speaking engagements? Have you heard him speak? If you're not listening to Biden on closed caption, you're not getting everything he's saying. Because he's either slurring speech or he's mumbling. And it's just everyone's okay with that. Because I keep telling you, look, I keep telling you. If the end of the world, took place, okay? And you had ICBMs. You had ICBMs coming down from the heavens, okay? Because there was a nuclear confrontation with one of our rivals. And Halley's Comet was redirected towards planet Earth. And you were driving, and a whole bunch of people who unfortunately were living on the streets in Democratic-run cities jumped on your car and took a giant dump while the Halley's Comet was redirected towards Earth. And the ICBMs were descending, which would cause nuclear annihilation. And you found out that you owed a fine because you didn't pay your MasterCard or a Visa card or Capital One. And you had a flat you got a flat tire as all of this was taking place. And the check engine light turns on right as all of this is taking place. Every possible thing that could possibly happen to you. If you were with a morally superior liberal, they would turn to you and say, you know what? It ain't so bad. At least we don't have Trump. At least Trump is not tweeting. They would rather have that, the check engine light, the popped tire, the people on top of the car taking dumps, Halley's Comet descending towards the planet, nuclear annihilation. They don't care. They would rather have all of that. A stock market collapse, which will happen. Subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel. I explain. Greatest amount of margin debt in the history of this country. Inflation, runaway inflation, CPI, PPI, Baltic Dry Shipping Index, all at record highs, not seen since 2008. We can go on forever. Okay, credit card debt at the highest point in our nation's history. I mean, we haven't even implemented Dodd-Frank in terms of derivatives. Okay, and exactly, zombie apocalypse. I mean, you can have, so the stock market crash is coming. We'll talk about that soon. Save your money. Save your money. Save your money in a savings account, ladies and gentlemen. Save your money. Because the market going up today is like just, it's a terrible thought. Think of the Hindenburg. It's just going to descend downwards. Open up a savings account. Open up a savings account. And every month, Mr. Ventes, hello. Open up a savings account tomorrow, if you don't have one. I'm sure you have one if you're watching this channel, but if you don't have one, open up. I don't care if you have $10 or $50 to put in. I don't care if it's $60 to put in. I don't care if it's $15. Open up a savings account tomorrow. Tomorrow. Every week, every month, save $10, $20, $30, $100, $200, $300, however, $500. If you could save $1,000 a month, if you could save $2,000 or $3,000 a month, whatever you can save. Whatever you can save every month from here on out. Don't worry about investing. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your investments. That's your decision. All I can tell you is that the stock market is going to crash. We have hedge funds that will go under, like the hedge fund Archegos, with risky derivatives. There's a greater exposure. They have greater exposure to derivatives than 2008. Greater exposure to derivatives than 2008. These banks and hedge funds. Okay, their exposure to risk and debt is just as bad, if not worse, than 2008. And with Evergrande, that's just one company. We already had a small hedge fund go under a couple of months back simply from Viacom stock going down. We had a bunch of Redditors, Wall Street Reddit, Wall Street bets going and forcing another hedge fund to get bailed out by other hedge funds. One hedge fund to get bailed out by other hedge funds because of a short squeeze on GameStop. Okay? The stock market is being inflated by the quantitative easing, the buying up $120 billion a month of government debt, government bonds, and other bonds by the Federal Reserve. The QE, the quantitative easing, has pumped into the economy one out of every $5. 20% of the money supply has been essentially created in the past year and a half. So the reason the stock market is going up, we have a labor shortage, a supply chain shortage. We have jobless claims up and a labor shortage. We have unemployment at over 5%, inflation at over 5%, and rents are increasing by 20% in many areas. There's going to be an eviction crisis, unfortunately. The stimulus payments the recent protocols in terms of payments, that's ending. You have the eviction moratorium ending. You have prices going up. And then if the stock market crashes, you're going to look at hedge funds either getting bailed out by other hedge funds or banks, or completely going under like Archegos, because of the risky derivatives trades that they purchased on margin. We have the greatest margin debt in history. The greatest margin debt in history. So, cornflakes. Hey, man, I got a new investment called cornflakes. Put your money in a savings account every month. Save every month. Have enough for a rainy day. Because a rainy day is going to come. You want to make sure that if, God forbid, the stock market crash causes a financial collapse yet again, where people are laid off because businesses have to go under because they can't raise any more money, and there's all these other problems, you want to make sure that you have savings that you could survive on. And that's the only thing that I'll tell people regarding any type of investing, which is not really investment advice, although one could say that it is, but save as much money as possible. The level of incompetence of Biden's administration, they're so clueless. And when they're blindsided by a problem, they then kind of revert back to this, oh, well, we're polished and educated, and we're handling everything in the manner it should be handled. And it's like, well, you can't, they're not, with Afghanistan, we realized that he's not a leader, that he does things to simply spite Trump, and the way he governs mashed potato brains is purely this exercise in public relations. So he didn't abide by the Doha Agreement because he wanted to control, he wanted to be able to say, well, we're going to leave on our terms, not Trump's terms. The problem was Trump's terms were agreed upon by even the adversaries because they were a part of the agreement. That's how you get a lasting agreement, when you have your adversaries agree. That's what's called either a peace deal or a deal to evacuate in a responsible manner. Biden, as late as March, didn't understand what he was going to do, didn't know what he was going to do. He didn't know what he was going to do. It took him until past March, until April, to finally say, well, we're going to leave, but you know what? We're not going to leave in May, we're going to leave in September. Completely arbitrary. Then in August, he, in a 2 to 3 week period, forced American soldiers on the ground who were overwhelmed and did the most amazing work, and our allies on the ground who are also amazing, to help evacuate 120,000 people. And 13 American lives were lost directly because of Biden. Because he wanted to spite Trump, and he didn't leave by May 1st. And the adversaries there, the T-Ban, we'll just call them that, stated, if you don't leave by May 1st, Brawl Stars fights, hello! Hello! Brawl Stars fights, hello! If you don't leave by Brawl Stars fights. What's the point of saving money with inflation? It's true, but the inflation rate's not the same for every state. It might not be the same in your state as it is nationally. Also, you're going to want to have the value of the dollar is not going to descend that rapidly in the next year and a half. It'll descend. Inflation will increase. You're still going to feel it, but you'd still be better off having a safety net of your own. Because I think that the stock market crash is going to be similar to 2008. You're going to have potentially bank bailouts. I mean, the catalyst, we don't know what the catalyst is going to be. We didn't really understand that Evergrande in China was going to default likely on $300 billion. So, but yeah, I mean, it is important to have a safety net of your own. So if, God forbid, mashed potato brains makes things worse for everybody, because he's not regulating, like, he's not doing his job. AOC and Bernie Sanders, they're not doing their jobs. We have, Warren Buffett, okay, all of these investors, they're talking about a stock market crash that we've never seen. And so it's not just little old me. I'm like one of the few, if not the only person in the sphere of politics that is talking about this. But in the financial world, you have most people saying, okay, the good times will just stay forever. And then here and there, you have the wealthiest people on the planet saying, yeah, get ready, because this is going to be a catastrophe. And I see this as well. The writing's on the wall. FedEx, General Mills, they're all saying inflation's going to increase. Silver, yes, I agree. I mean, today the market went up because the market went up. It's really hilarious. So the market went up because I did a segment on Jim Cramer on CNBC on the stock market crash channel, and he was like, two things that I like, two reasons to buy in the market now. And he was like, the Evergrande crisis isn't as bad as we thought, and the Fed isn't going to taper until next year. And he's like, that's why you should go ahead and look at this market. In my head, I'm like, so the Federal Reserve is going to eventually begin tapering, which will be cutting back on the purchase of government bonds and easing off on pumping money into the economy. Okay, the quantitative easing will soon end, and the scaling back of the QE is going to frighten the market to no end. Okay? The market will be terrified. And whether it's that or, the economy's not good enough. We still have high unemployment. We still have inflation. The economy is not rebounding in the manner that they expected. And the stock market can't really look at economic indicators to keep going up. If they look at the economic indicators, it'll crash sooner than later. The economic indicators, GDP is being revised downwards. Corporate profits are being revised downwards for future profits. The corporate profits are only up because people were stuck in their homes and prevented from working for a year. So you have people willing to pay more for goods and services. Once inflation starts to increase, people aren't going to pay more for goods and services. They're going to say, you know what, we'll just wait for a sale, or we're just not going to pay this amount of money for these goods and services. FedEx and General Mills today or the other day also both said, yeah, inflation's going to increase. So, I mean, the rebound is not happening. The original sin is you prevented people from working because Democrats said, oh, here's a chance to get Trump out of office. So media and Democrats said, no, the experts say we can't open up. And so the original sin was preventing people from working, which is completely irrational, a paranoid and hysterical, counterproductive, illogical response to a serious crisis. Cancer and heart disease ended the lives of more people than you know what, but we didn't ban McDonald's. We didn't force McDonald's out of business or Burger King, but we forced mom and pop restaurants and everybody else. But here is the latest stock market crash channel segment. Here it is. Go ahead and subscribe to it. It's doing well. And, you know, it's like, just understand, like, what I'm trying to tell, what I'm telling everybody for the next year, because the crash is going to take place. It could be next week. It could be in March. It could be in June of next year. I don't know. But it's going to happen. And when it happens, it'll be like 2008. And what I'm telling everybody is every single day of your life, you should be happier, healthier, more successful, stronger, more passionate about life, more energetic, just make sure that the trajectory of your life continues to go upwards. Not like the trajectory of our country, which is spiraling downwards in every way possible. We're getting... things are becoming more irrational every day because we don't have a leader with vision. We have mashed potato brains who doesn't know what he's doing. We showed the world how incompetent we were with the manner in which we evacuated. He wanted to spite Trump, and so we still have Americans in Afghanistan. 13 Americans lost their lives because of Biden. Over 169 Afghans lost their lives because of Biden. Then there was a strike that ended the lives of 11 civilians? And you don't see AOC or anyone else condemning Biden, do you? No, you don't. Not the same condemnation, the same gleeful condemnation they would have leveled at Trump. And so there's this world that exists in the minds of Democrats that, justified ending our economy for a whole year. Like, that was the brainchild of maniacs. Why would you end... No, I didn't say that word. Why would you prevent people from working and end the economy? Does that make any sense at all? How can you simply go ahead... We had record low unemployment with Trump. Record low unemployment. We had wages increasing. Wages have decreased 2% because of inflation. There are so many examples of like completely irrational behavior, from the stock market to the manner in which Democrats manipulate semantics and have this apoplectic reaction to words and meanings and semantics and nomenclature. And it's like the priorities of media and Democrats are all over the place. And when the stock market crashes, they'll, like, I think most people will kind of understand. Most people will kind of understand that they've been focused on everything. Like, what they've been focused on is not what is important to the country. We should have been focused on economic growth. They're focused on taxing the rich, climate change. It's like, yeah, you know, climate change, it is an important issue. And if you could get hundreds of thousands of people working immediately with green jobs, that would be great. But that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And they use words like shovel ready. The majority of the labor force isn't necessarily suited for shovel-ready jobs. So the construction in the sector is a relatively small part, pretty small part of the U.S. economy, like 6-7%, something like that. So you have an infrastructure bill that talks about everything but economic growth. Moody's and the Wharton School of Business say it's going to decrease GDP. So I don't understand, like, what are they thinking? They want to tax corporations, which at this point, if you forget about the debate about taxing corporations, maybe there's a time when you don't have a labor shortage and jobless claims going up, when you don't have consumer confidence at a low not seen. Everything is at either a low or a high. Consumer confidence is at a low not seen since 2008. Inflation is at a 13-year high since 2008. The consumer price index, the producer price index are at highs not seen since 2008. The Baltic Dry Shipping Index, shipping throughout the world, goods and services, is at a high not seen since 2008. The stock market has more debt and margin than ever before because the Federal Reserve has pumped so much into the economy that and interest rates are at zero that Wall Street traders would rather have equities in many cases than bonds. So you've given this incentive for moral hazard. You've incentivized people to do things that are risky, that could turn out really badly. So, I mean, you have this, it's just this, like, you have this, the writing is on the wall. The writing is on the wall, and the only good thing from the stock market crash is that it'll truly, like, unfortunately, give people a jolt, or a society a jolt, to where they're like, okay, you know what? Maybe the latest book about what Bob Woodward says about Trump isn't important at all. Maybe, just maybe, the fact that yet another catastrophe taking place under Biden's administration. We can just win. You could talk about what's taking place at the border and atrocities taking place under Biden's watch. The media does not cover it. AOC is not looking at a chain-link fence in a photo where you can't see what she's looking at, because if you saw what she was looking at, you'd see it was just a vapid propaganda fueled public relations attempt at disparaging Trump. They don't care. Like, they pretend to care about the suffering and the plight of people. Marginalized people. They pretend to care. When those same marginalized people are suffering under Biden, suddenly it's not worth discussing anymore. Suddenly they just focus on yet another grievance. Bernie Sanders and AOC, they have the younger people say, oh, it's a grifters. Well, they call anyone who doesn't agree with them grifters, or anyone who maybe started on the left that becomes more conservative on things. Oh, they're grifting. The grift is not becoming a Trump supporter. This is not like, thank God I'm doing okay because I have an amazing, amazing group of people who like enjoy my work. And that's how I can do what I do through the super chat and by you sharing the article, the videos and subscribing, not just to this channel, but the Stock Market Crash channel. That's growing. But I have a pretty amazing viewership, and I'm very fortunate, very lucky. But if you want to get really wealthy, you talk about how Trump worked with Russia still today. That's the grift. The grifters are the people who look at Bob Woodward's book and think it's an actual news story. Or the grifters are like people like, oh, I don't know, AOC, who talk about taxing the rich in a wearing a very expensive dress that says tax the rich, while at the same time knowing very well Democrats get all their money from oil and gas and the wealthiest people on the planet. So it's like, Joe Biden himself is the antithesis in every way of what the left claims to stand for. But they don't care. They don't care. They don't care because it's very lucrative. So the most lucrative side in politics is the left, by far. Okay? You don't even have to really say anything worthwhile, and you'll still get half a million, 1 million subs just by parroting CNN. Literally just by parroting or just by focusing on the same stories. So MSNBC, CNN, the Washington Post, the New York Times, basically mainstream, is geared towards propping up the Democratic Party. All you have to do is latch on to that, leech on to that, latch on to it, whatever. And you can just go ahead and get a viewership and, you know. But I am continually moving upstream. I told everybody that Clinton would lose to Trump. She did. But I also said that the Trump-Russia thing was complete nonsense from the very beginning. They made up everything. And you had people really thinking that he worked with Russia. And it was this frenzy. It was unfortunate. Exactly, the champagne socialists. But let's see here. Now there's a January 6th committee. Okay, so the FBI already stated that Trump did not organize or have anything to do with the terrible tragedy on that day. Why are they still talking about it? Because they need to extract every ounce of political utility possible. My God, they have nothing. What bills have they passed that they're proud of? How have they made the lives of their constituents? Because they care about half the country that watches Jimmy Kimmel and touches themselves in ecstasy to everything that, like, late night says about Trump. Meanwhile, the same late night comedians don't even touch Hunter Biden or his emails for sure, but all the different, thank you, B, thank you so very much. All the different photos, like very bizarre videos and photos from the president's son. They would never stop making fun of Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump if the tables were turned. They would never stop. Every night would be a segment dedicated to a new photo or email. Every single night. And they don't touch it. that's the only good thing, because the stock market, I don't want people to lose money. I think Bitcoin is going to crash. I think the cryptocurrencies are going to crash too. You already have Biden. You're the Federal Reserve, Facebook, and Twitter, all trying to introduce their own digital currencies. Does that make any sense to you at all? You have Facebook, Twitter, and the Federal Reserve. Could you imagine? B, thank you. Could you imagine? What's the point? Hold on. The Federal Reserve wants a digital. What is the Fed to release paper on central bank digital currency soon? What is the point of that? Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense at all? I don't think this looks good for Bitcoin, just because I respect the people who invest in Bitcoin and who started it, and I respect those people. I do. But now the Federal Reserve wants its own digital currency. So how do cryptocurrencies deal with that? And they might say, well, it's a completely different, so what? Who cares? Jordan, thank you. Jordan, thank you so very, very much. Jordan Weinberg, thank you so much. Thank you. Exactly. Vicky, exactly. The Buffett indicator, exactly. Jordan Weinberg, thank you as always. Thank you as always, Jordan. Greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you. I hope all is well. Thank you, Jordan. You have a situation where it's like we can see that, unfortunately, the near future is not going to be very bright for the country. We can kind of see this already. Jordan, thank you. It's just a matter of, look, we've pumped, the Federal Reserve through quantitative easing has pumped so much money into the economy that the market is at all-time highs, but you can't, there's no way to, even if you try your best to help the economy rebound through quantitative easing, you're going to if the economy doesn't rebound in the manner that you predict. So the Federal Reserve has a different way of calculating inflation than other economists. There's inflation is well over 5%, and some people say it's going to be it's higher than that. The cost of rent is increased substantially. I mean, everything's increased substantially. But you have GDP being revised downwards. And the only reason you have a 6% GDP is because you had no GDP last year. You had negative growth in the last 2 quarters, or the last two of the 4 quarters. You had negative growth starting in March. So they say, oh, everything's rebounding, and you know what is subsiding. It's well, okay, but they're focused on everything but. They're focused on irrational protocols, taxing corporations, infrastructure bills that will actually decrease GDP. They're not focused on economic growth. Trump was focused on economic growth. He wanted the country to grow economically. And we did that. And they're not focusing on the rebound first. So Democrats want every little pet project implemented, and they want all their sensibilities revered, but the unemployment rates in the top 10 highest unemployment rates are in the most populous Democratic-run states. Go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics right now. You can see the top 10 highest unemployment rates are in blue states. The unemployment rate is not falling as fast as we expected. Job growth is not. We had the greatest jobs miss in history. Jobs aren't growing as fast as expected. There's supply chain shortages. I mean, every economic indicator is trending towards a collapse. And you have a situation where they're clueless. They're like absolutely clueless. They don't think that '08 can happen again. They don't think that the country is being mismanaged. They think that they thank God, or they don't believe in God, but they just thank their lucky stars that Trump is no longer tweeting because it ruined their psyche and their emotions, and they'd rather have the end of the universe than Trump tweeting again. And they're completely clueless. In foreign policies, foreign policy is a catastrophe with Biden. A catastrophe. Trump was so much better. France recalled. France. You remember how Trump was like, oh, big obstacle to NATO. Oh, Trump. The French, or Macron, didn't like Trump. Okay? But he didn't recall an ambassador. With Biden, they stole a submarine deal away from France with Australia. So the French now are really upset. They're really upset. Agent Pepsi won. How can there be a collapse under Captain Depends? Oh, mashed potato brains. We don't know the extent of his ability to mess things up. But they recalled an ambassador. And it's like that. I mean, when have U.S.-French relations been this bad? You tell me. How do you recall an ambassador? U.S.-France dispute divides Europe. This never happened with Trump. The Biden administration needs to act fast to reset relations with France. They messed up. They completely botched the evacuation, but they made up for it by ruining relations with France. How do you do that? Even Trump didn't. The worst thing Trump did was shake Macron's hand, I don't know. They're like, look the way he's shaking his hand, like an authoritarian. Meanwhile, they recalled an ambassador with Biden, and nobody. Well, at least he shook Macron's hand really nicely, quivering and all. That's the only good thing about the stock market crash. It'll kind of reset people's priorities into, okay, well, maybe Trump's personality isn't an issue. Maybe you're just going to have to deal with different personalities. Maybe that's just okay. You see this in life, too. You see this, I don't want to get into it. But they really found a way to mess things up. David, hello. Eric and Luke, hello to my moderators. So let's just look really quickly at... So you type in Trump, and it was, and so he's suing Mary Trump, which is hilarious. Oh, look at that. Texas, spurred by Trump, announces audit in 4 counties. Well, there you go. What I find interesting is the outrage over, that's why I started the chat. There's zero outrage over an Arizona state senator, Democrat, charged with like 7 felonies, 6 or 7 felonies. Zero outrage. But oh my God, you wouldn't, if you don't trust the pristine results after you spent 5 years blaming Russia. These people blame Russia every day for 5 years for their loss. They never viewed Trump as legitimate. They always thought that he either cheated them or they didn't trust the results because of Facebook ads. And it's like, then they say, oh my goodness, look at our democracy, look at Trump. And then they really think the Lincoln Project people who should have been already kicked out of politics, but these people are the most despicable, already disgraced people. The founder of the Lincoln Project is like completely disgraced. The Bill Kristol, Lincoln Project type neoconservatives have never been right. Max Boot, they've literally never been right on any foreign policy topic. They don't know much about foreign policy. They can talk about it, but they don't know much about it. Like, if you're a football coach and you only lose, but you're really good at X's and O's, but you only lose, well, you're not really a good football coach. You don't know much about football. If you're always losing, it really doesn't matter how much theory you know or how many X's and O's and the plays you can design. If you're always losing, you're not a good football coach, and you probably don't know much about football. They are always pushing for failed wars and failed military conflict and failed policies. And they should have already been canceled because they were against, the Lincoln Project people were against, and Bill Kristol were against marriage equality. I mean, you look at everything from the Emmys to the Lincoln Project, there's hypocrisy everywhere. That's why half the country looks at, the liberal Democrats who are half the country or so. You should say like also media, because not just, it's like liberal Democrats, media, Hollywood, everything. They look at the other half, the people who vote Trump, or the people who just sit it out, or the people who are independent and don't really don't really have an allegiance to either side. They say, oh, how dare you don't trust us? We have all the experts saying, but everybody knows it's a fabricated, any consensus they point to is a propped up, fabricated consensus. They silence speech. They marginalize and try to disparage anyone who disagrees with them. They actively try to ruin anyone who disagrees with them. Look what they did to Nicki Minaj. And she fought back, which is, God bless her, she's amazing. But look what they did. And then they say, elevate voices, elevate voices. It's all about like them looking in the mirror and feeling good about themselves. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think I will be back at around 10:30 tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So, this has been an amazing live stream. We had a lot of people. Ian, everybody here. B, everybody here. Thank you so very much. Eric and Luke, thank you. And Luke, thank you. I will be back at, say, 10:30 this evening. So be here at 10:30, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. Thank you so very much. Hit subscribe, and I will be back at 10:30, people. Thanks, everybody.